It was finally happening. Today was the day. Though it was being called the wedding of the universe, it wasn't as overly glamorous as people made it out to be. Still, everyone was excited as they could hardly contain themselves, and their excitement for what was to come as they were preparing for the ceremony that was meant to be taking place very soon. Things were just about to start up with the guests on the list having arrived, and Ben was ready in a tux, waiting for everything to start. We see Tetrax, who is the best man at the wedding, which was decided well before the whole Time War thing started, as he asked Ben if he was ready to take that leap, and he nods in response to their question, taking a deep breath. The guests were all taking their seats where they were meant to, as the ceremony was just about to commence, and the wedding march slowly began to play as we see Gwen, in her wedding dress, slowly being walked down the aisle by her father, as they were making their way to the altar. Oh, she was stunning, more beautiful than ever in that dress. It was a rare sight to see someone like Benjamin Kirby Tennyson crying, but there he was up at the altar, with tears running down his face as he'd smiled at the blushing bride-to-be. Tetrax whispered, asking if Ben was alright, because he was crying, and he says that he's doing fine, wiping away some of the tears from his face with the sleeve of his tux. Once they'd gotten to the altar, her father went and sat down with Gwen, seeing Ben still had tears coming down his face. She'd look concerned, since she wasn't used to seeing him with tears in his eyes anymore. He hadn't cried in front of her since they were children, and Ben tells them that he was alright. Ben goes on to wipe his face and eyes with his sleeve again, saying that he just can't believe that it's finally happening, and that someone so incredible said yes to marrying him. He also says that he didn't think it was possible for her to be even more beautiful than she already was, and that it was like a goddess was in front of him, and that he was lucky to have her in his life. This, especially coming from Ben, had Gwen blush, as it was a lot more heartfelt when he said things like that, as he wasn't the mushy type, as she smiled, turning to the minister and giving the nod to start the ceremony so that they could finally get married at last. And they began to do just that for them. They had begun the ceremony telling everyone that they were here to witness the union of Ben and Gwen in matrimony, and the two stood waiting for their turn, with the minister asking if anyone was there who knew why the two should not be wedded, then let them speak now or forever hold their peace. And no one said anything as they sat watching. Since there was no one who objected, they then got to the I do's, which Ben and Gwen both had said at the same time, wanting to hurry things along a little, and they nodded, before telling them to present the ring. Upon doing so, the minister then officially pronounced them husband and wife, telling Ben that he may now kiss the bride. And everyone watched with bated breath as the two kissed for a moment before pulling away and smiled. The entire crowd cheered in congratulations as they'd run out to Ben's car together, and Gwen tossed the bouquet as, surprisingly, Rayona, who was Rook's +1, had been the one to catch it. Ben laughed seeing that, and he and Gwen got into the limo that was going to take them to where they had chosen to have the reception. Surprise, surprise, they'd had to work that in somehow. The reception was the same restaurant in which they'd had their first date, rented out for the occasion. People were coming in, congratulating them, chatting with them for a bit, and moving on to join the crowds as they had a delicious meal all planned out. Finally, their parents and Max had shown up, along with Albedo, and they'd congratulated them on tying the knot together with Grandpa Max, talking about how they used to not even be able to stand one another as kids, but here they are 10 years later, officially married to one another. He told them that he couldn't have asked for a better person to call his granddaughter. Gwen smiled hearing that, since Max was always like a grandfather to her, but now it was official. Well, sort of, grandfather-in-law, but close enough. They then proceeded over to their main table, with Rayona asking why they had chosen to have the reception here, and Rook explained that Ben and Gwen went on their first date together here, so it holds a lot of importance to them. Ben says that the whole family is there. Well, almost. Kevin sadly had to miss out because of whatever was going on over at his end, but he told them congratulations on the engagement at least, when they were last video chatting together. The servers came out and began to take everyone's orders and the like. They had fun at the wedding and enjoyed the food there too. And then they had started the speeches, with some of them embarrassing the two of them. Well, embarrassing Gwen at least. Ben was back to his usual self, if smiling and laughing a bit more today because of being such a special occasion. Sandra had pointed out that they didn't need to remember 2 dates for anniversary because the wedding was on the same day as their first date. sleep. That Ben did sigh a little at, as the others laughed and teased them about it. It was eventually time for the best man speech, and Tetrax began telling the crowd about how he first met Ben, how he was reckless and didn't think before he acted, couldn't even hold a simple plaster properly. But now he'd become the most feared and respected man in the Milky Way, and he was proud of the man that Ben had become in those 10 years. He also told them about what he knew of Gwen, though they didn't interact as much over those years as he did with Ben. He did still get to watch her grow into an incredible person as well, not to mention one skilled in magic too. He couldn't believe that 10 years had passed, but the way he sees it, those two were meant to be, and they raised a toast to the two of them. After cutting the cake together, they enjoyed the party a bit more, and eventually things had started winding down. Once the last of the guests had left, they then proceeded to head on home, too, taking Ben's car this time instead of a limo, and went on home ready to just relax and tomorrow start their honeymoon. Ben lifts up Gwen, bridal style, as he carries her into their house, telling her welcome home, Mrs. Tennyson, to which she then responded back, good to be home, Mr. Tennyson. The two of them then laughed together as Ben shut the door with his foot and carried her up on the stairs to their bedroom because they were exhausted from that and just wanted to rest and relax. They could officially start their lives together in Mr. and Mrs. Tennyson tomorrow. Right now, sleep.